The night air is cold enough to make your teeth ache. You press your tongue against them and taste the faint iron of your own gums. The wind carries dust across the courtyard, soft, whispering dust, the kind that never falls straight, only drifts. You are alone. The stone beneath you is not smooth, not polished. It is pitted, worn down by the souls of people whose names no one remembers. Your knees protest, your back too. You shift, and the fabric of your tunic scratches your skin like dry reeds. Somewhere far above, a bell waits. It has not been rung in weeks. It will not ring tonight unless someone dies. You think of bread, of warmth, of the weight of a blanket that doesn't smell of mildew. You think of the steady warmth of a friend's voice, but your last conversation was with a pigeon. The pigeon left first. They say the palace bell is older than the empire it serves. They say it was cast from coins taken from the mouths of the dead. But they always say such things. In truth, history's edges fray. Bells do not care for truth. Bells care only for being struck. What if history erased you, not in a sudden fire or a fall from grace, but in the slow wearing away of breath and memory? Tell us where you're listening from, or what time your night begins. The palace is larger than you imagined when you first saw it from the road. Up close, it feels heavier, as if the stones have been taught to press down upon whoever looks at them. Your breath comes slow, visible in the cold, and you let it linger in the air before it fades. The guard at the gate does not look at you. His eyes follow a crow instead, black against the clouded sky. You pass under the arch, feeling the way the wind changes, no longer wild, but funneled through narrow spaces where the smell of wet mortar clings. No one speaks here unless spoken to. The palace is not silent. Not exactly. You hear the scrape of sandals, the creak of wood, the muffled thump of something heavy being set down in another room, but the sounds are swallowed before they can settle. Somewhere deep inside these walls, records are being written, not the kind that will survive centuries, but lists. Who has eaten, who has paid, who has not. The clerks will never meet the dead. They will still write their names. Your fingers trail along the wall as you walk, tracing the grooves where two blocks meet. Stone has a temperature that never quite changes, colder than flesh, warmer than ice. You find it oddly reassuring. The bell tower is not the tallest point in the city. It doesn't need to be. Its sound travels further than sight, curling over rooftops, slipping down alleys. A boy once told you the bell's note could be heard even in dreams, that it would bend into your sleep and stay there, ringing until you woke to find the reason. He also said that sometimes, if no one had died for a while, the bell would ring by itself. You didn't believe him. Mostly, you step into a smaller courtyard, open to the sky. It is damp here, not from rain, but from the way stone traps and exhales moisture. The moss between the flagstones makes the air taste faintly green. An old woman sits on a bench, a basket in her lap. She is not weaving, not mending, just holding the basket, as if she has forgotten why she brought it. When she looks at you, her eyes are glassy but not blind. "You're early," she says. Her voice is not unkind. You do not know what she means. You nod anyway. Past her, the steps to the bell tower rise in narrow turns. The climb is slow, the air thinning with each bend. A tapestry hangs along one wall, so faded the figures have no faces. You touch the fabric, it feels like dried seaweed. Your knees ache before you reach the top. So much for dignity. The chamber is smaller than you expected. The bell itself is huge, suspended in a wooden frame, darkened by centuries of smoke and breath. It smells of iron, dust, and something faintly sweet, like old candle wax. Through the narrow slits in the wall, you can see the roofs of the city, the river glinting dull in the fading light. You think of how sound will travel down the steps, over the gates, into the streets where traders count coins and children chase dogs. The sound will move faster than any messenger. You do not touch the bell. You only stand there, listening to the stillness that hangs around it like a cloak. Somewhere far below, a door closes. A voice calls out, too distant to understand. The air shifts. It will not be long now. But that wasn't even the worst part. The first thing you notice is the change in air. It comes in like a tide, not stronger, just different. You breathe in and taste something metallic, faint but certain. It doesn't belong to the wind. Below the bell tower, footsteps echo against the stone stairwell. Not hurried, but not ceremonial either. The kind of pace that says the task is necessary, but not welcome. You move aside. The rope that hangs from the bell's yoke sways, though no one has touched it. It creaks as if remembering the last time it was pulled. A man appears at the top of the stairs. His robe is plain, his hands clean but dry, cracked. He avoids your eyes, focusing instead on the beam that holds the bell. The wooden frame is older than him, older than anyone alive, perhaps older than the city walls themselves. You'll want to stand back, he says quietly. You do. The floor beneath your sandals is worn to a shallow dip where generations have stood to listen. You think about how many pairs of feet, how many bodies, how many breaths have waited here for the same sound. The man grips the rope. For a moment he just holds it, knuckles white, as if unsure whether to pull. Then he exhales a slow, resigned breath and gives it a single, steady tug. The sound arrives not as a crash, but as a swelling. It blooms in the air like ink in water, a deep, rolling tone that seems to bend the space around you. The vibration passes through the floor, into your legs, up your spine. You feel it in your jaw. It tastes like cold copper. Below, the city pauses. Even those who don't know the meaning of the bell travelers, beggars, restless children stop for a breath. Somewhere, a cartwheel halts mid-rotation. Somewhere else, a bird takes flight, startled into silence. The man lets the rope fall back into place. He doesn't look satisfied. He doesn't look grieved either, just emptied. That's that. He murmurs and starts down the stairs again. You follow, slower, your hand trailing along the cool wall. At each turn, the tone of the bell lingers a little less, replaced by the soft shuffle of sandals and the smell of extinguished lamps. When you reach the bottom, the old woman with the basket is gone. Her bench is wet from the air, but not from rain. The courtyard is quiet, except for a faint scratching sound. A boy, not the one you remember from long ago, but another, is using a shard of pottery to carve something into the base of the wall. His letters are clumsy, uneven, but deliberate. You glance at the words without meaning to. She is gone. He doesn't look at you. He just keeps carving, each stroke leaving a small pile of pale dust at his knees. Your throat feels tight, though you don't know her, whoever she was. Past the courtyard, a narrow passage leads into a wing of the palace you've never entered. The air there is warmer, heavy with the scent of oil lamps and boiled grain. You hear the low murmur of voices, some steady, some shaking. You step closer, and the words become clearer. They're speaking in the formal tone used for official records, names, dates, places, the shape of a life condensed to lines of ink. Your foot catches on the edge of a mat. It's thin, woven from reed, and beneath it, you can feel the unevenness of the stone floor. You adjust it without thinking. The voices keep going. They could be speaking of anyone. On a table against the wall, there's a ledger bound in leather gone soft with use. Beside it, a pen rests in its ink dish. The page is open to a blank line, waiting. You stand there, unsure if you're meant to write, to read, or to leave. The bell's echo still hums faintly in your ribs. Somewhere outside, a wind rises. The shutters knock softly against their frames, and then the voices stop. What they do next will depend on whether they believe the dead should be named aloud. You wait in the doorway, as if the air on the other side might tell you what to do. It doesn't. It just hangs there, warm and still, carrying the smell of beeswax and faint mildew. The clerks sit at a long table. 3 of them, each with a posture that says their backs have long ago given up on comfort. Their robes are the pale gray of unwashed linen, and the sleeves hang like tired wings. One clerk dips his pen. The motion is careful, almost tender, as though the ink is scarce and temperamental. You watch the bristles touch the page. The sound is smaller than you expected, just the whisper of fiber on fiber. A name is spoken, slowly, as if tasting it for the last time. The syllables settle in the room like ash. You step forward, but no one turns. Your sandals scrape against the floor, so much for subtlety. One clerk glances up briefly, not with curiosity, but with the distant politeness reserved for strangers who have not yet proven to be trouble. The ledger is larger up close. The leather cover is scored with scratches, some deep enough to catch your fingernail. Along the page, each entry begins the same way. A line for the name, another for the year, a third for the reason. You can't tell if the reasons are for the living or for the dead. A second name is spoken. This one shorter, sharper. The clerk writing it down hesitates. The ink pools slightly before the stroke is finished. The hesitation feels heavier than the word itself. In the corner of the room, a small brazier glows with low embers. A kettle sits on the edge, steam curling out in thin threads. You think of how steam moves, how it disappears, without anyone noticing the exact moment it's gone. The same way the tone of the bell faded from the city streets. One of the clerks coughs. The sound is sudden, almost startling. He covers his mouth with a cloth, folds it, places it on the table. You wonder how many other cloths, folded the same way, are stacked in some unseen room. Do you need to add a name? The question comes from the oldest of them, his voice worn thin, as if stretched over too many winters. He doesn't look at you when he speaks. His eyes remain on the page, ready to catch whatever answer you give. You shake your head. You don't trust your own voice, not here, where the silence feels owned by someone else. The old man nods, makes a small mark in the margin, and turns the page. The next leaf crackles faintly, the sound dry enough to make you thirsty. The room has no windows. Only a single oil lamp above the table throws its light down, leaving the corners in shadow. The light clings to the clerk's hands, illuminating every line, every small tremor. After a while, you don't know how long the names stop. One clerk closes the ledger, pressing the cover down with his palm. Another gathers the pens into a clay jar, the tips still wet with ink. The old man closes his eyes, as though sealing the moment before it scatters. You leave before anyone tells you to. The corridor outside is cooler, the air less heavy. You walk without deciding where to go, your hand trailing the wall, fingers finding the shallow carvings where the stone has been marked, perhaps by accident, perhaps not. The palace is full of spaces that serve no clear purpose. A narrow alcove holding nothing but a stool. A doorway bricked up long ago, the outline still visible. A staircase that ends in a wall after only 5 steps. You pause at the alcove. The stool's wood is pale where it has been worn smooth by years of use. You sit, not because you need to rest, but because you can. The act feels faintly rebellious, a seat taken without permission. From here, you can hear the faint hum of activity somewhere deeper in the palace. Not the chaos of a market, but the low, steady pulse of ordered movement. A door opening, a foot dragging slightly, the soft thud of cloth being folded and placed onto a stack. You think of the old woman in the courtyard, how she had said you were early. Early for what? The bell had already rung. The name had already been written. What else is there to be early for, except one's own turn? Your mind wanders unhelpfully to the idea of the bell ringing again, soon. Would it sound the same if 2 deaths came close together? Would the note be flatter, more hurried? Or would the bell remain unbothered, indifferent to how many lives ended in its shadow? A draught brushes your ankles. It carries the smell of damp earth and something faintly bitter oil for lamps, perhaps, or for the hinges of doors that must move silently. You follow it, letting the air guide you down a narrow side passage where the ceiling dips low. The floor here changes. Stone gives way to packed earth, uneven and cool under your soles. The corridor bends sharply, and you find yourself in a small courtyard, this one roofed only by clouds. A fig tree grows in one corner. Its leaves are broad, dark, trembling in the light breeze. At its base, a set of clay jars stands in a cluster, their surfaces mottled with the pale bloom of age. A rope runs from the tree to a wooden post, its fibers frayed but still strong. A young man kneels beside one of the jars. He looks up at you with the polite detachment of someone used to being watched but not spoken to. Without a word, he dips a ladle into the jar and offers you a drink. The water is cool, slightly sweet, with a hint of mineral that clings to the back of your tongue. You didn't realize how thirsty you were until it's gone. He nods once and returns to his work, rinsing another jar with careful, slow movements. You notice the way his hands, though young, are lined with fine cracks, the kind that come from long hours in water. The rope overhead creaks. You follow its line to see where it leads not far, just across the courtyard to a small wooden door. The wood is old, grayed from weather, but the handle is polished smooth from countless touches. You cross to it. The door opens without resistance, revealing a short flight of steps leading down. The air changes again cooler, denser, carrying the scent of stone that has never seen sunlight. At the bottom, the space widens into a low chamber. Shelves line the walls, each stacked with bundles wrapped in cloth. Some are tied neatly, others sag, their bindings loosened by time. The bundles are labeled with strips of parchment, the ink faded but legible. Names, always names, some with years beside them, others without, some tied with red thread, some with none at all. You step closer, running your fingertips along the edges of the cloth. The texture changes, some coarse, some fine, some soft with age. You wonder if the difference means anything, or if it's simply whatever was at hand when the wrapping was done. A faint drip echoes from somewhere deeper in the room. The sound is slow, patient. It doesn't hurry. You crouch to look at the lower shelves. Here, the cloth is thinner, the thread more fragile. One label has slipped halfway free, hanging at an angle. You write it without thinking, and the dust it carried clings to your fingers. The air here is heavy with the weight of being forgotten. Not neglected. Exactly, someone has taken care to store these bundles, but left behind in a way that feels deliberate, as though remembrance is measured, rationed. You hear movement behind you. The young man from the courtyard steps into the chamber, a jar in his arms. He sets it down near the wall between two shelves as if it belongs there. Then he straightens, brushing dust from his knees, and studies you for a moment. "Not everyone gets a bell," he says. His voice is quiet, but the words carry in the stillness. You want to ask why, but the way he looks at you makes it clear that answers here are given only on the day they're needed. He turns and leaves, his footsteps fading up the stairs. The door above closes with a soft thud. You stand there, surrounded by the quiet bundles, the slow drip of water, the sense of air that has not been moved in years. Your hands are still dusted with the touch of cloth that once belonged to someone. The thought arrives uninvited but steady. How many more bundles will arrive before the next bell? You don't move for a long while. The air in the storage chamber is still, as if the dust itself has decided to rest. You can hear your own breathing shallow, deliberate, and the occasional settling groan of the wooden shelves. There's a comfort in the weight of so much silence. A kind of protection, as though the world above cannot reach this far down. You imagine the sound of the bell here, how it would come not as a clear strike, but as a low trembling, rolling through the stone like distant thunder under the floor. Your fingers trace the red thread of one bundle, then another. Some threads are taut, crisp from having never been untied. Others sag, like a bow that has lost its shape. In a corner, you notice a shelf where the bundles are different. They are smaller, wrapped in plain linen without labels. The cloth looks newer, though the dust says otherwise. You kneel. The lowest bundle rests unevenly, as if something inside it is not smooth. Your hand hesitates before touching it. You don't open it, you know better, but you feel the faint curve of something hard beneath the cloth. It could be anything, or nothing at all. The drip of water continues, steady as a clock that no one wins but that keeps perfect time anyway. You look toward the darkened end of the room, where the stone narrows into another passage. You walk toward it. The air grows colder, enough to raise the fine hairs on your arms. The drip grows louder, sharper, not one source, but several, like a slow conversation between stones. The passage ends in a small opening just high enough for you to stoop through. Beyond it, there's another chamber, smaller, round, with walls darkened by centuries of damp. In the center is a shallow basin cut into the floor. Water gathers there from the drips above, the surface rippling with each drop's arrival. It smells faintly of earth and iron. Kneeling beside it, you see that the water is not clear. It carries a pale cloudiness, like milk swirled into tea. You remember hearing once, or maybe you dreamt it, that water from under the palace was once used in rites. Not for blessing, but for remembering. On the far side of the basin, a narrow shelf has been carved into the wall. A single clay cup rests there, no dust on it. Someone has been here recently. You pick it up, feeling the fine grain of its surface. It's light, almost too light, as if time has hollowed it. When you set it back, it makes no sound against the stone. A voice drifts in from the other chamber. Faint, unsure, maybe calling your name, maybe just shaping a sound that happens to carry the right rhythm. You retrace your steps, the cold air clinging to you like a second skin. The young man from earlier stands at the foot of the stairs. He doesn't come down. He just waits, hands folded in front of him. You're wanted. He says. He doesn't say by whom. He doesn't need to. You follow him up into the courtyard. The light has changed softer now, the kind that comes just before dusk. Shadows from the fig tree stretch across the packed earth like dark fingers. From here, you can hear the city again. A faint, muffled hum of life wheels on stone, a child's shout, the distant bark of a dog. The bell's echo has long faded, but the pause it created still lingers in the air, as if the city hasn't fully remembered how to move. The young man leads you back through the narrow corridors, past the alcove where you'd sat earlier, past the closed ledger room. Eventually, you come to a door you haven't seen before, tall, fitted with bronze hinges that gleam in the dim light. He opens it just enough for you to enter. Inside, the air is warmer than anywhere else in the palace. A brazier burns low in the center, filling the space with the smell of charcoal and something herbal, rosemary, maybe, or thyme. A single figure sits on a cushioned seat. Their robe is plain but well kept, the hem just brushing the floor. Their hair is bound back with a strip of cloth. They look at you for a long moment before speaking. You've seen the tower. You've heard the bell. It isn't a question. You nod, and you've seen the shelves below. Another nod. They study you, eyes steady, unblinking. It is not the bell that marks death. They say at last, it is the writing. Without the name, there is no record. Without the record, there is no end. The thought settles into you slowly, the way cold does when you stand still too long. They gesture toward a low table beside them. On it lies a small bundle, no larger than your hand, wrapped in fresh linen. There is no label. This one, they say, has waited longer than most. You don't ask why. Instead, you notice how carefully it's been wrapped, the folds precise, the thread new but tied with an old-fashioned knot. They don't move to give it to you, and you don't move to take it. The space between you feels like a kind of agreement. The bundle will remain where it is until someone decides otherwise. After a while, they stand. The motion is slow, deliberate, as if to avoid waking something unseen. They step past you to the brazier, stir the coals with a thin rod. The scent in the air sharpens, filling your throat, your chest. It feels both cleansing and clinging at once. When they turn back, their face is unreadable. The bell will ring again soon. They say, you may wish to be above when it does. You leave the room, the warmth fading from your skin as the cooler corridor air takes over. The young man is gone. Your footsteps sound louder than you'd like. Somewhere above, you hear the faint creak of wood, the rope shifting, maybe in a draft, maybe in anticipation. You think of the basin below, the cloudy water, the empty cup. You think of the bundle on the table, waiting longer than most. And you wonder when the bell rings next. Will it be for someone who knows their name has already been written? You do not climb the tower immediately. The palace's corridors have a way of making you walk slower than you mean to. Not because you're cautious, though you are, but because the air here feels like it's holding you back. Each step pushes against something invisible, like wading through water that isn't there. The sound you heard the faint creak from above has stopped. The silence that replaces it is not stillness, but waiting. It has a shape, a density. It makes you notice your own heartbeat in a way you'd rather not. You pass the alcove again, the stool still empty. The worn wood looks softer in the fading light, as if it's been absorbing the day's fatigue from the people who sit there. You resist the pull to rest on it again. Instead, you follow the narrow turning hall toward the outer edge of the palace. There is a balcony there, open to the west. The city spreads below, the rooftops like uneven tiles on a vast, ancient roof. From here, you can see the river glinting pale under the late light, winding past the far gate. You can almost hear the merchants packing their stalls, the clink of coins reluctantly counted, the soft grunt of lifting sacks onto carts. A gust of wind pulls at your sleeve. It brings with it the smell of clay dust, charcoal, and the faint sweetness of figs, probably from the courtyard you passed earlier. It's the kind of smell that could make you think of home, if you still had one. You turn back toward the tower. The stairs are narrow, the steps uneven. Your sandals make a low scuffing sound on each one. There's no hurry. The bell will not be rung until the moment demands it, and the palace moves toward such moments with deliberate slowness. Halfway up, you pause. On the wall to your left, there's a mark, not a carving, not a stain. It's a handprint, faint, almost gone, but the fingers are long, the palm wide. You press your hand over it. It's colder than the stone around it, as if it remembers a different kind of touch. You continue climbing. The light changes as you near the top more open, touched by the last sunlight of the day. The bell chamber greets you like a held breath. The bell itself hangs in shadow now, the sun falling on the wall opposite. The rope is still. The wooden frame creaks softly, but not from movement, only from the slow cooling of the day. You walk to the narrow opening that serves as a window. From here the streets are narrower, the people smaller. You can see movement. A boy pulling a goat by a frayed rope. A woman balancing a basket on her head. A group of soldiers walking in pairs, their spears catching the light like thin flashes of fire. Somewhere below, a shutter bangs against its frame. The sound echoes up, momentarily louder than the street noise. Then it fades, leaving you with the low hum of the city at dusk. The last time the bell rang, you felt it in your ribs before you heard it in your ears. You wonder if it will be the same tonight. Footsteps on the stairs, slow, deliberate. You step back from the window as the man from before the one who pulled the rope appears. He nods once, in recognition, but his eyes are elsewhere. "You came early," he says, the same words the old woman in the courtyard had used. Before you can ask what he means, another figure appears shorter, heavier, with a hood drawn low. They carry something wrapped in cloth. The shape is not large, but it is heavy enough to make their steps deliberate. They set it down on the floor beside the rope. The man glances at you briefly, then at the bundle, then at the rope. "It's time," he says. The hooded figure pulls back the cloth just enough for you to see a fragment of what lies inside, not flesh, not bone, but a strip of linen, stained a deep, uneven brown. You look away without meaning to. The man takes the rope in both hands. His shoulders rise, then fall, as he takes a slow breath. The hooded figure closes their eyes. The first pull is steady, almost gentle. The sound blooms in the air, not loud, not yet, but deep. You feel it in the floor before it reaches your ears. The second pull follows, slower, the tone carrying further this time. It rolls outward, over the rooftops, into the river's slow current, into the fields beyond the gates. The hooded figure opens their eyes but does not look at you. The man lets the rope sway gently, the bell's last note lingering in the air like smoke. When it fades, the chamber feels heavier, not quieter, heavier. The air is thick, as if the sound has left something behind. The hooded figure covers the bundle again, gathers it into their arms, and starts down the stairs without a word. The man follows, leaving you alone in the chamber with the faint scent of oil and dust. You stand there a while, looking at the rope, the beam, the shadow of the bell against the wall. From below, you hear the sound of sandals on stone, the echo fading as they move deeper into the palace. You think of the storage chamber, the shelves of bundles, the ones tied with red thread, the ones with none at all. You think of the empty cup by the basin, waiting for someone to remember to fill it. And you wonder when the bell stops ringing for good. What will happen to the names? You leave the bell chamber slowly. The stairs feel steeper going down. Each step carries the faint memory of the sound, not the tone itself, but the way it pressed into the air. You breathe more deliberately now, as if you might still be carrying some of it inside you. Halfway down, you pause at the handprint again. In the dim light, it looks darker, as if it has absorbed more shadow since you first saw it. You press your palm to it. The coldness hasn't changed. You think of all the people who might have stopped here before, resting their weight for a moment before taking the last climb or before going down for the last time. At the base of the stairs, the corridor is empty. The sound of your sandals seems too loud in the stillness. You pass the alcove, the stool now occupied by a boy with knees drawn to his chest. His eyes follow you, but he doesn't speak. You nod, he doesn't nod back. The courtyard is dim now, the fig tree casting thicker shadows. The jars are still there, their rounded forms catching what little light remains. The young man is gone. A guard passes by the far archway. The glint of the metal fittings on his belt catches your eye, but his gaze is fixed straight ahead. He walks like someone following a route he has taken too many times to think about. You decide to walk toward the west wing, a part of the palace you haven't entered before. The air shifts as you go, cooler and heavier. The scent of oil lamps is stronger here, mixed with something less pleasant, boiled leather, perhaps, or damp cloth stored too long. You turn a corner and find yourself in a long hallway lined with niches. Some hold small clay urns sealed with wax. Others hold tablets of stone, their carvings shallow from age. Names again, always names. You run your fingertips along one tablet. The grooves of the letters are faint, almost gone. It occurs to you that in another few decades they might be unreadable. Would anyone recarve them? Or would the stone simply remain, stripped of its purpose? A faint sound reaches you not from behind, but ahead. Not footsteps, a slow scraping like cloth being dragged over stone. You follow it. The hallway narrows into a small room. In the center stands a table, low and wide, its surface scarred with cuts and stains. Two figures work there, their movements slow but certain. They are wrapping something not hastily, but with deliberate care, folding the cloth in precise, even layers. You watch without stepping closer. The bundle they create is small, bound with thin cord, tied in a knot you've seen before on the shelves below. When it's done, one of them reaches for a strip of parchment, writes a name in firm, practiced strokes, and ties it to the cord. The other looks up, noticing you for the first time. You came from the tower. They say, not a question. You nod. They set the bundle aside, as if it now belongs to a different order of things no longer theirs to keep. It will go below, to the shelves, or perhaps not. You don't ask which. Instead, you notice another table against the wall. On it are several small bowls filled with ink, each a different shade, some deep black, others faded brown, one a strange greenish hue. Beside them, a collection of brushes and pens lies neatly arranged. Some are clearly well used, the wood worn smooth by years of grip. Do you write the names yourselves? You ask. The nearer figure nods. It must be written by someone who hears it. They say, otherwise it won't stay. The thought unsettles you. It makes you think of all the names you've heard but never spoken aloud, as if they might now be drifting somewhere, unanchored. You leave the room before they can ask you to help. The corridor beyond feels longer than when you entered, the air heavier. When you finally reach the courtyard again, the sky above is deepening toward night. A lantern has been lit by the archway. Its light wavers in the wind, casting shadows across the stone. The boy on the stool is gone. The jars remain. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the slow closing of a heavy door. You think about the bundles, the ones wrapped and labeled, the ones not. You think about the ink bowls and the way the names must be written by those who hear them. And you wonder, when no one is left to hear, Will the names vanish before the bell even stops ringing? The lantern at the archway sways gently in the breeze. You watch it for a moment, the light spilling in uneven arcs across the stone. It feels like the kind of movement that could lull you into stillness if you let it. But the wind shifts, carrying a sound you don't expect, a faint metallic tap, as if something thin and hollow has struck against iron. You follow it. The palace at night is different. Not quieter, the silence is the same, but more deliberate, as if the walls themselves have decided what sounds they will allow through. Your own footsteps are muted, caught, and swallowed before they can echo. The sound leads you past the western courtyard, into a passage you've never taken. The air here smells faintly of ash, as though fires have been kept burning in small, hidden spaces. Your fingers brush the wall warmer here than in the other corridors. At the end of the passage, you find an open doorway. Inside, a single brazier glows low, the embers deep red. A man sits beside it, working with a set of tools laid neatly on a cloth. Long, handled tongs, a mallet, a chisel with a narrow blade. He is shaping something small, a thin strip of metal, bent into a curve. Each time he adjusts it, the edge strikes against the tongs with that faint metallic tap. You realize, watching him work, that he is making a bell clapper. Not for the great tower bell, the size is wrong, but for a smaller bell you haven't yet seen. Without looking up, he says, "This one's for the records room." His voice is low, steady. The big bell calls the city. The small bell calls the clerks. You think of the ledger, the steady hand of the old man, the names spoken into the stillness. What happens when both bells ring? You ask. He pauses, the metal cooling in his hands. Then you have to decide which to answer first. The answer doesn't comfort you. It wasn't meant to. He sets the clapper aside, begins wrapping the tools back into the cloth. The embers shift, sending up a faint hiss as ash falls into their glow. When he finally looks at you, his eyes are tired but sharp. "You came from the tower," he says. "Everyone says that." You nod. Go back before the wind turns. Sound carries differently when the air changes. It's not a warning. It's a statement of fact. You leave him there, the brazier casting his shadow high on the wall. The corridor beyond feels cooler now, the smell of ash fading as you walk. The main courtyard is almost empty. Only the fig tree seems unchanged, its leaves dark against the night sky. The jars glint faintly in the lantern light. You cross toward them without deciding to, drawn by the way their shapes repeat in the shadows. One jar is missing its lid. Inside, you see nothing at first than the faint gleam of water, dark and still. You dip your fingers in. It's colder than you expect. The touch makes you think of the underground basin, the cloudy water, the cup waiting on its shelf. A movement catches your eye. Across the courtyard, the young man stands in the archway. He doesn't call to you. He just watches. Then he turns and disappears into the corridor beyond. You follow. The path leads you past the alcove, past a low storage door, and into a room you haven't entered before. It is small, square, lined with wooden boxes stacked almost to the ceiling. Each box is marked with a single character burned into the wood. Some marks are deep and dark, others faint and shallow. The young man gestures to one box near the center of the wall. You step closer. The mark on it is fresh, the edges of the burn still sharp. You lift the lid. Inside there are strips of parchment not folded, not bound. Each carries a name, written in ink so black it still shines faintly. Some strips are new, the edges crisp. Others are brittle, curling in on themselves. These are for the ones who are not kept below. He says quietly, not everyone is given a bundle. Not everyone is meant to be remembered in the same way. You set the lid back, careful not to disturb the order of the strips. When you turn, the young man is already gone. The boxes seem to lean toward you in the dim light, their rows like silent witnesses. You think of the shelves underground, the bundles tied in red thread, the ones without any. You think of the small clapper being shaped by the brazier's glow, and you wonder when both bells ring, which names are spoken first. You stand among the wooden boxes for a while, listening to nothing. There's a stillness here that's different from the quiet in the ledger room or the underground shelves. Those silences are filled with the weight of things already done. This one feels like it's waiting for something to begin. Your hand rests on the lid of the box with the fresh burn mark. It's still faintly warm under your palm, though you can't tell if that's from the air or from the work it took to make the mark. The grain of the wood is fine and dry, and you can feel where the surface has been smoothed by use. Whoever made these boxes did so with more care than the palace tends to give to the living. The smell in the room is layered dry wood, faint smoke from the branding, the sharpness of ink that hasn't quite lost its scent. It makes you think of libraries, though these are not books, and this is not a place for reading. You open the box again, just a fraction. The parchment strips shift with the movement of air, a soft rustle that feels almost like speech. You pick one at random. The name is written in a hand you don't recognize, thin strokes, a slight lean to the right, the kind of writing that doesn't hurry but doesn't linger either. You mouth it silently, as though saying it aloud might wake something in the room. You put it back exactly where it was, not because anyone told you to, because it feels wrong to leave it anywhere else. When you close the lid, your eyes drift to the box beneath it. Its burn mark is older, the edges blurred and pale. You imagine the years between the branding of the two boxes. How many other boxes have been made in that time? How many strips of parchment filled them? How many names no one speaks anymore? Your hand is still on the lid when you hear movement. It's not footsteps, more the sound of cloth brushing against wood, quick and close. You turn to see the young man again. He's standing in the doorway, but his posture is different now, shoulders set, eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing whether to say something. He steps into the room, not looking at you but at the boxes. His hand brushes one as he passes, a gesture so brief you might miss it if you weren't watching closely. "These," he says, "are the ones who cannot be put below." The words settle in the air between you. He doesn't explain further. You wait. They are not. Forbidden, he adds after a pause, only unfit for the shelves. It's not the answer you wanted. It's not an answer at all, really. But the way he says it makes you think you'd rather not know the full reason. He doesn't stay long. When he leaves, he doesn't look back. You're alone again, surrounded by boxes full of names that do not belong with the others. You leave the room slowly, taking care not to let the door slam behind you. The corridor outside is cool, the air less dry. It smells faintly of stone dust and something herbal, maybe from the brazier you passed earlier, or from some unseen storeroom. You walk without deciding where to go, following the dim light ahead. The hall bends, then bends again, until you reach a small stairwell that leads upward. The steps are narrow, worn in the middle, the stone polished to a dull sheen by years of feet. At the top is a low landing with a door of heavy wood. The handle is smooth, almost slippery from use. When you push it open, you find yourself in a narrow gallery overlooking one of the inner courtyards. From here, you can see the fig tree clearly, its dark leaves swaying slightly in the night air. The jars beneath it catch the lantern light, their rounded forms glowing faintly. One jar is tipped on its side, its lid resting a short distance away. The courtyard is otherwise empty. No young man, no boy on the stool, no movement at all. Only the quiet sway of branches and the occasional flicker of lantern light. You lean on the railing, the wood worn smooth under your hands. Your breath fogs faintly in the cool air. It's the kind of night that makes sound travel strangely sharp in some places, muffled in others. You can hear the faint hiss of the fig leaves, but not the sound of your own sleeve brushing against the railing. Somewhere far off, a bell rings. Not the great bell of the tower, this sound is lighter, quicker, the tone bright but shallow. The small bell, the one the brazier man said was for the clerks. It rings once, then again, then silence. You wait for footsteps, for movement in the courtyard below. Nothing comes. After a while, you go down. The stairs are steeper than they seemed from above. When you reach the base, you cross to the fig tree, crouching beside the tipped jar, It's empty. The inside smells faintly of damp clay. The lid has a thin crack running through it. You set it back on top, fitting it to the rim as best you can, though it doesn't sit perfectly anymore. You're still crouched when you hear another sound, not the bell this time, but a low creak from the direction of the tower. You straighten slowly, listening. It comes again, the soft wooden sigh of the rope moving in its frame. Not the strong pull of ringing, but a shift, as if the bell is testing its own weight. You walk toward it. The palace at night feels different in this direction, the air cooler, the smell of dust more pronounced. Your footsteps seem louder here, though you're not walking any faster. At the base of the tower, the door is ajar. You push it open gently, the hinges moving without a sound. The stairs rise into darkness, the curve of the wall just visible in the lantern light, spilling from outside. You take the first step. It feels colder than you remember. Halfway up, you stop. There's a sound from above, not footsteps, not the creak of rope, but something softer. A breath, maybe, or a whisper. You climb the rest of the way, your hand trailing along the wall. The bell chamber is dim, lit only by the faint light from the narrow windows. The bell itself hangs as it always does, heavy and still, but the rope is swaying, only slightly, but enough to make the shadow on the wall shift with it. You step closer, looking for any sign of who was here. The floor holds no fresh dust, no prints, only the faint scent of oil, the same as always. The rope slows, then stops. You stand there until even the shadow is still. From this height, the city is dark, the river a dull silver thread under the moonlight. No movement, no sound from below. It feels like the entire city is holding its breath. You think of the small bell, the quick tone that rang twice and then stopped. You think of the boxes of names that cannot be put below. You think of the man shaping the clapper, and the choice between which bell to answer first. And you wonder, if both bells ring at once, will the city hear them differently, or will it all just sound like one long call to the end? You stay in the bell chamber until the cold has worked its way into your knees. It's not the kind of cold that drives you away immediately. It's slower, deliberate, almost polite in how it takes over. You only leave when you notice your hands are stiffer than they should be. The descent is easier than you expect, though the shadows along the wall feel thicker now. That faint handprint you've touched before is still there. In the lantern glow from below, it seems darker, as if someone pressed their palm to it again while you were above. You don't test it this time. The door at the base of the tower stands open, letting in a draft. It carries the smell of wet clay, though the night air is dry. You follow it into the courtyard. The fig tree is still. The jars beneath it sit as before, except one, the same one you found tipped earlier, now stands upright. The cracked lid balanced neatly on top. No one is in sight. A sound breaks the quiet, a short, sharp ring. Not the great bell, not the small bell you heard earlier. Something in between. It echoes strangely, as if struck inside a room with no windows. You cross the courtyard, pass through the far arch, and find yourself in a corridor lined with alcoves. In one, a man sits with a small bronze bell in his lap. Its surface is plain, the color deepened by age, the rim just slightly dented. He holds a wooden striker in one hand, tapping the bell gently every few breaths. When he notices you, he doesn't stop. "This one," he says softly, "is for the in-between." You wait for him to explain, but he only taps the bell again. The sound is lighter than the tower bell, slower than the clerk's bell. It lingers in a way that makes the air feel almost liquid. Some deaths, he says after a long pause, don't belong to the city, and don't belong to the records, but they still need a sound. He sets the striker down, resting both hands on the bell. "I don't know where the sound goes." He adds, "Maybe nowhere. Maybe that's the point. The words follow you when you leave the alcove." The corridor opens into a hall you've never entered, its floor a patchwork of worn stone, the walls marked with faint outlines where hangings once were. Whatever stories they told have been removed, leaving only the bare surface. At the far end, a wide doorway stands open to the night. Beyond it, a terrace overlooks the outer wall of the palace. From here, you can see the dark hills beyond the city, their shapes softened by the moonlight. A guard stands at the edge, his spear planted beside him. He doesn't acknowledge you, though you're sure he's aware of your presence. The air here smells of dry grass and the faint tang of iron from the wall's fittings. Somewhere behind you, faint and far, comes the deep tone of the tower bell. Not a full peal, just one strike, measured and final. The guard doesn't move. You stand still as well, letting the sound settle. It fades slowly, sinking into the spaces between the hills. You think of the three bells now, the great bell for the city, the small bell for the clerks, the in-between bell for those who belong to neither. And you wonder when all three sound in the same night, who will know which one was for them. You wait on the terrace until the air cools enough to sting your cheeks. The guard hasn't moved. Perhaps he's trained not to, or perhaps he's simply part of the terrace, now another fixture of stone and iron. When you finally turn away, the halls behind you feel emptier than they did before. Not because there are fewer people, you've barely seen anyone all night, but because the spaces seem to have stretched. The silence has room to grow. You pass the alcove with the man and the in-between bell. It rests now on the floor beside him, wrapped in a piece of cloth. He looks like he's sleeping, though his posture is too straight for true rest. You don't disturb him. The corridors take you back toward the fig courtyard. The lantern has burned low, its light soft and uneven, making the jars look almost translucent. The cracked one is missing. The space where it stood shows only a faint ring of dust. You stand there longer than you mean to. The fig leaves stir in the faintest breeze, a whisper that might be words if you were tired enough to believe it. Your hands itch to reach for one of the jars, to feel its cool curve under your palms, but you don't. A sound draws you on the scrape of something heavy on stone, muffled by distance. It comes from the direction of the underground stair. You follow it, down past the walls where the air changes, becomes stiller, heavier. At the bottom, the storage chamber is dim. The bundles are there, in their shelves, their red threads catching what little light there is. A figure moves slowly among them, the young man. He's holding one of the smaller, unlabeled bundles. When he notices you, he doesn't startle. He simply nods as though you were expected. This one doesn't go on the shelf, he says quietly, nor in the boxes. He turns toward the narrow passage that leads to the basin chamber. You follow, your sandals scuffing the stone. The basin water is still cloudy. The sloe drips above, breaking its surface with patient regularity. The empty cup is gone. In its place sits the cracked jar from the courtyard, tilted slightly, water gathered in its base. The young man kneels, lowers the bundle into the basin. The cloth darkens instantly, the red of its thread deepening as it soaks. He doesn't let go until the bundle is fully submerged. When he does, it rests at the bottom, swaying faintly with each drop that falls. "No bell," he says, "not for these." His voice is flat, but not unkind. You watch the water ripple. The jar at the edge tips slightly as he stands. He leaves without another word, disappearing into the darker part of the passage. You stay. The water smells faintly metallic now, the way the tower bell tastes when it rings. The ripples fade slowly until the bundle looks as though it has always been part of the basin floor. Above, somewhere far off, the deep note of the great bell rolls through the air. It's softer here, muted by stone and water. It fades before you can decide whether it was meant for the city, for the records, or for something in between. You place your palm on the damp stone rim of the basin. It's colder than the handprint on the tower stairs, colder than the fig courtyard at night. And you wonder if a death is not given a bell. Does it still belong to the palace at all?